So, I got to cover a couple things that have come up in the last couple days of in wrestling. Um, I just think there's a huge misconception or deflection by the fans of AEW versus the fans of WWE, and the lack of fans of the current um, NXT product. So the first thing I have to say is I watch all of these shows. I watched Raw this week. I actually liked it. First time in a while, but I honestly liked it. I watched some SmackDown because there's some guys on there I really like Ridge Holland, who's a product of, who's a Vince McMahon type wrestler who came out of the end of the old NXT slash new NXT. Um, I obviously like Brock Lesnar when he's there, Roman Reigns. I do like McIntyre and Sheamus. Those are like the kind of wrestlers I'm into. So I try to watch SmackDown when I can and watch those guys. I watch Rampage. It's hit or miss for me. It's not at all what I thought it was going to be. It's basically a Sunday Night Heat, maybe a lesser version of that. And I watch Dynamite, or I record it. All these things, if I can't watch, I record it and just try to catch up on it. When I'm at the gym or whatever. And then I watch NXT 2.0, which I really like. So I have to say that there's just a huge deflection here. The fans who love the old NXT, and I am going to stereotype and generalize you guys, so everybody can be offended, and that's fine because I really don't care. Everybody who loved the old NXT, the original NXT, everybody who's like kissing Triple H's ass and saying how great they love him and all this and that, even though they hated him for like a decade and a half. Now they love him, right? NXT original fans are obviously a crossover with AEW because it's a similar product. And that makes sense, right? It was a focus on little guys, smaller guys who are extremely athletic, who use a lot of kicks, a lot of chops, a lot of dives, a lot of flips, guys who like the fast pace, who the online wrestling fan could tag for work rate, guys who you might see in New Japan, Ring of Honor. There's just a lot of crossover there, right? And to be fair, NXT was doing it before AEW existed. The only problem with NXT was just that NXT was still part of the WWE, and because of that, they weren't really producing for Vince McMahon and the upper management who run Raw and SmackDown what they felt they needed for main event status and drawing power to the general public, right? And therein lies the rub here. AEW is looking to work inside out. They are not trying to suck in the fan from 20 years ago. They're willing to just get the fans who love Ring of Honor, the fans who loved parts of New Japan, the fans who obviously were into NXT original. Those are the fans that they are capturing, and they're capturing in droves. And those fans are they're not that large, right? They're probably not more than 1 million rating, but they're loyal, and they're going to work their way from those fans out to the general public and get as much as they can in that way. The WWE doesn't work like that. From the upper echelon, Raw and SmackDown, their pay-per-views, even though they don't use the old traditional pay-per-view methodology, the idea of WWE is they really work outside in, meaning they try to present characters and they don't say they succeed. They were much better at this 20 years ago. But they try to present a product that they feel they can get the majority of the casual fan, the fan who's on the fence about liking it, fan who doesn't need wrestling but will watch it. They want to present that fan with something to get them to watch and then hold the core fan afterwards. So they have two different methodologies. So The problem that they ran into, and I've said this before, but it bears repeating, the NXT originals were not going to make it as main event stars for Raw, SmackDown, and WrestleMania. Okay? Why? A lot of that has to do with their size. Okay? Kyle O'Reilly, Adam Cole, Bobby Fish. There's nothing wrong with cruiserweights, welterweights, middleweights. There's nothing wrong with them. If you watch MMA, those guys are killers. Okay? They're killers. But the difference is, this is not MMA. This is wrestling. It's not real. The winner and the loser is predetermined. So is Adam Cole a killer, or is Adam Cole a great ballet dancer? This is not an insult, but this is just the question that you have to ask if you are trying to create a product that is interesting to the general public. Like if I go to, and let me just say this, wrestling has always been presented as the sport of wrestling. That means that wrestling categorizes itself as something that you can also be into if you like football, baseball, basketball, hockey, boxing, mixed martial arts. So if you're going to go after that audience, which is the stereotype of that 18 to 40-year-old male demographic, that audience is not going to be as drawn to a 5'9", 150-pound person who does a lot of kicks and gets a lot of cooperation in the middle of the ring and does a lot of pretty ballet-type maneuvers that looks very coordinated versus a guy who is 6'3", 240 pounds of muscle, who looks like they just slammed another guy into the steel steps, hit him with a chair, punched him in the face. That guy looks like, whoa, to that casual fan. Okay? That's been the basis of pro wrestling for 100 years. Having people that are impressive to casual fans. Because they look at them and say, whoa, I don't look like that. That guy's a killer. He's an ass kicker. Then they look at Adam Cole and they say, whoa, he's great. Opening card match, he looks cool. He does a lot of interesting stuff. But is he the guy who you put the company, you put the whole company on his shoulders? No. It doesn't work. And he's not Shawn Michaels. He's significantly smaller than that. And I'm picking on him because he's a stereotype. But I could say the same for Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. These guys were great for what they were in NXT original. They basically were Ring of Honor in the WWE. And that was awesome, okay? But that's not what the WWE makes its money on. So the WWE made a mistake, in my opinion. Instead of creating NXT 2.0, what they should have done is say, we want guys like Tony D'Angelo, like Braun Breaker. What we're going to do is we're going to have them train. We're going to put them on local television in Florida because that's where we're located. And we're going to have them do a little bit of light traveling, maybe have them do opening dark matches for Raw and SmackDown, and that's it. When we feel they're ready, we'll bring them up to Raw and SmackDown, and we'll still keep this NXT thing going because it's popular amongst the core audience. What they chose to do, which is their prerogative because it's their money, they chose to just bail out and let the NXT originals go to AEW. Let Tony Khan spend his money on these guys. Let AEW capture the audience that they have already been stealing from the beginning, and let them put these guys on a bigger display. So they got the Young Bucks, you got the O'Reillys, you got the Fishes, you got the Adam Coles, you got the Jungle Boys. Now you got a lot of guys, similar weight, similar size, and they can all do their flips and their dives, and they can have beautiful matches that the core fan loves. But they are not in competition with the WWE because now they've gone so far away from what the WWE does. They've taken their own road, and WWE has said, goodbye, NXT, we're not interested in going down that path. We're going to go down our own path. We're going to make stars like we used to for the product that we are good at. Because AEW is terrible with the big guys. They're not average. They're terrible. Where was Miro this week? Did he have a match? Did Will Hobbs have a match? Wardlow had a squash match. All his matches are the same now. They make him come out. He kicks a guy and does 4 power bombs, and then they get Spears in the ring, and they're building the storyline about how Spears and MJF are going to separate from Wardlow and all that. They don't let this guy work. They don't let him work. The big man in AEW is non-existent. The big man in WWE is where they make their money. WWE is a middle to big guy company. AEW is a middle to small guy company. So, yes, WWE is not trying to compete with AEW at all, and AEW is basically doubling down on what they did and what NXT did before. They are not competing with the WWE. That's why they're not hitting a million rating, by the way. Their ratings have been down, and I think it's down because they're doubling and tripling down on ex-WWE smaller guys. They're not bringing Bill Goldberg in. They're not bringing Brock Lesnar in. They're not bringing in Damian Priest. They're not bringing in Ridge Holland. They're bringing in small to middle guys. And there's nothing wrong with Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, whatever. There's nothing wrong with CM Punk. I think that the CM Punk's flair is gone. Like, whatever excitement there was around him, that's been burned out. I don't know if it's because he has no edge to him at all, but I look at him and he's very dull to me now. MJF is destroying him on the mic. He can't keep up with him on the mic at all. And in the ring, it's fine. It's fine. It's nothing special. Everybody does the same moves. So the problem is that he's not protected as a character because everybody does the same moves. In WCW, in WWE, when Hulk Hogan could barely move, do you think Vince McMahon would let the opening card guy do the same leg drop that Hulk Hogan does? No, they protect him. AEW doesn't have that concept. They don't protect their characters because it seems like a place where the inmates run the asylum. And what I love about AEW is they have an owner and they have a culture of freedom and they take risks and they take chances. What I don't like about AEW is they have a culture of openness and freedom without control. So you see the same neck breaker, the same super kick, they use the same Canadian destroyer 10 times a night. So it has no effect. As a fan, when I watch it in the first 10 minutes and it's all through the night, it looks silly. So when a guy like CM Punk comes in, CM Punk's moves are not protected. I mean, Sammy Guevara has the same finisher as CM Punk. How the hell do you have a company where you're going to bring in a guy who was one of the last stars of this industry in this last decade, and he comes in, and the TNT champion, who's a young guy who you're pushing, they have the same finishing move? The hell is that? They have the same finishing move. Okay? So that's a huge problem, but that's AEW right there. And a lot of nerdy fans are going to be very angry about AEW. Say, the Undisputed Era is reunited. This is great. And they get very angry at people who say anything negative, like, I didn't like the show, or, I didn't like this and that, because they're not interested in the big picture. They're only interested in what they like, and that's their niche. And that's fine, because wrestling is subjective. But there are a lot of fans who are not into just pounding away at the 5'9", 160-pound super kick. Okay? Again, AEW, what made them so cool before was not only did they take chances, they brought in certain guys, right? Like Jon Moxley got a platform in AEW he didn't have in the WWE. Okay? He didn't have that platform. He could be legitimately a heavyweight champion. He's not that small. He's above average size. He looks like he could kick your ass, and his matches are cool. That made a lot of sense to me. I thought he came in and he lit them on fire in a way that CM Punk has not been able to do. Now Brian Danielson, he's come in and he's done a good job because he's just been showing off his wrestling. He's like a Chris Benoit type. He's a little undersized, but he's built. Okay? Like Eddie Guerrero. So he comes in, he's just showing off his wrestling. And universally, people who like WWE and people who like AEW both are into him. Okay? That's been working. Cody Rhodes, Cody's strength is honestly, it's not the mic work, it's not the drama. His storylines are all the same. It's the ring work. Okay? He's like a poor man's Randy Orton. And that's not an insult because I think Randy is great. Okay? Cody is very, very good. But he needs to be on television wrestling. Wrestling. They need more of his wrestling. Because when he doesn't wrestle, they have too much of the same. They got Malachi Black. I think they're giving him a platform he didn't have necessarily in WWE. And that makes perfect sense. But you got to be careful. Because when you don't have time for Will Hobbs, okay? When you don't have time for Ricky Starks, when you don't have time for Brian Cage, who's never had a platform in his whole career, and he's not the youngest guy anymore. This would have been AEW was a place for him to come in and be a stud, and he's basically just washed out. I don't even know if he's still even with the company. This guy gets no platform. When you don't have time for those guys, when you're forcing Wardlow every other week, he gets like a 2-minute squash match. When you're doing that, that tells you you've oversaturated yourself with talent and you need to start making some tough decisions. Are you trying to just triple down on NXT originals and some guys from WWE who all have similar fan bases? Or are you trying to be something different, creating your own stars, bringing in guys from the independents, giving them a WWE-like platform, and really having a diverse show that has a different edge to it? That's the question that has to be asked. That's the question that NXT or that WWE and NXT original people, have to ask, or have to get into with Tony Khan, right? What direction are we going? Is it all going to be about CM Punk and Adam Cole and Fish and O'Reilly? And I don't know if Roderick Strong is leaving. Roderick Strong's about to get squashed, by the way. Carmelo Hayes is definitely going to beat him, and they're going to unify that title, and they're going to make Carmelo Hayes the North American or whatever champion, whatever they're going to call it when they unify it. And Roderick is going to be relegated to light work. Okay. You could already see that coming a mile away. And Ciampa's probably going to lose to Breakker unless they're going to just bring Breakker up to to Raw or SmackDown, which I personally would bring the whole roster up. And this is going to get me transitioning over into into what I wanted to talk about with NXT 2.0. I know a lot of people don't like NXT 2.0 because this is the problem that WWE has. They're losing the NXT original fans who weren't enough to carry them in the ratings, but I don't care about that. They're losing the NXT original fans to AEW like they have been for a long time. And at the same time, NXT 2.0 appeals to an audience that is not watching. So NXT 2.0 appeals to people who used to like Ruthless Aggression, who like WCW Worldwide, who liked WCW Saturday Night, who liked Sunday Night Heat, Velocity. That's the audience that NXT 2.0 appeals to. You're going to watch young guys try to develop their characters. You're going to see them take some more chances. They're being more aggressive on Tuesday night from 8 to 10 than they are on Monday night or Friday night. But you could already see it paying some dividends, okay? Austin Theory, all right, a Vince McMahon approved type character getting a little bit of a run. You see it on SmackDown, Ridge Holland, a Vince McMahon type character getting a little bit of a push with Sheamus. So you already see the wheels turning. Look, they needed a place to create wrestlers that they would support. There's no reason to have a developmental that you're not going to develop people that you want. On the other hand, I don't think they needed to gut the NXT 1.0 because they knew this was going to happen. The problem NXT 2.0 has from a rating standpoint, from a fan support standpoint is, again, the Raw and SmackDown audience doesn't necessarily watch. In fact, they're not watching because the ratings are so significantly different, right? We're talking about 400,000 people, 500,000 people versus 1.5 million for Raw and 2 million for SmackDown. The AEW audience, some of them are still watching, but most of them have tuned out because they're mad because they're going to the bigger guy, they're changing the style of wrestling. Even though if you watch a Carmelo Hayes match, if you watch the Creed brothers, if you watch, if you watch pretty much any Jacket Time, Josh Briggs, Brooks Jensen, the Grizzly Young Veterans, Imperium, Tommaso Ciampa, if you watch all these guys, yes, the new guys, Joe Gacy, they may be bigger, but they can still wrestle. They're showing you that bigger guys, bigger athletes are not necessarily incapable of moving. We're not talking about the Big Show. I'm not talking about Hulk Hogan in his 50s. These guys are still athletes. Are they able to do like triple plancha backflips out of the ring every second? No, but they can still do dives when they have to. But they don't needlessly move. They move with more of a purpose because the people backstage are more disciplined. Shawn Michaels, okay, who is basically one of the founding fathers of the style of wrestling that everybody who loved NXT 1 and AEW is obsessed with. Shawn Michaels is one of the producers there. And he would tell you, just like he would tell the AEW guys if he talked to them, hey, don't do a dive every second. Don't do a super kick every second. Not just because it's his finisher, which they ruined, but because it takes away from the purpose. NXT 2.0 is doing what AEW is not doing, okay, on television. And AEW does have YouTube shows. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have time to watch AEW's YouTube programs and watch televised wrestling. So I hope, for the sake of AEW, that they are giving guys a platform there and that they're going to start using them on television. Because Will Hobbs if he's not on television, he's not becoming a bigger star, right? Same thing with Starks, same thing with Brian Cage, same thing with Wardlow, all these guys. They have to be on television. NXT 2.0 is basically Florida Championship Wrestling. It's OVW on a much bigger platform because they're on the USA Network. I wouldn't be surprised if one day they're not on the USA Network because they're just not worth having on there. But they are presenting the style of wrestling and the type of show that you could translate up to the bigger audience, up to Raw, up to SmackDown. So that's where I stand on AEW NXT 2.0. You can like both, but stop complaining about, every time somebody dislikes something about AEW, go watch WWE or whatever. Listen, they're going in different directions. There's things I'm going to dislike about NXT. There's things I'm going to dislike about AEW. My biggest critique of NXT 2.0 right now is that they didn't need to kill the first one to make this. And I'm not sure if being on USA Network is good or bad, but I would argue that I could bring all of these guys up to Raw. I could bring them all up to SmackDown. I could keep them in the first hour of both of those shows, especially Raw, because it's 3 hours. I could devote an hour of Raw every week. The first hour of Raw could be just the NXT 2.0 guys coming on and performing. Let them get their feet wet there. But these guys are a better fit. They're not, and it's not just my opinion. They're literally signed off by Bruce Pritchard, by Vince McMahon. So they're not going to go to the upper tier and immediately get crushed like some of these other guys would. And AEW is tripling down on what brought them to the dance, which is being NXT 1.0 on a bigger platform. But is that really all that they're going to do now? Because I think they're starting to lose what made them most interesting. And if you look at the ratings, they're not going up. So there is a problem there. Okay? Not saying you get rid of Danielson, but one Danielson, maybe you don't need Punk. Maybe you don't need Adam Cole, Ed O'Reilly. And I mean, when was the last time the Bucks, the Bucks aren't wrestling as much either now, right? I mean, it's a repetitive group of guys doing similar moves and cutting similar promos. And I don't know. It's hard to tell now. I'm rooting for all of these companies. I really am. But I don't know where this is going.